the utmost gratitude from me, my partner Jazz, and our entire team for choosing to be here tonight, for choosing to add to your repertoire of tools an investment in Multiplex tonight, featuring none other than a huge friend and loyal supporter of the REC, Darren Voros. Darren, a big round of applause. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, we're here. As happy.
For those who don't know Darren is an accomplished investor first. What we believe makes us different is the fact that we are investors first. So Jazz and I invest in real estate. Darren invests in real estate. We are very biased to what the best investment vehicle on this planet is. And we believe that history is the best teacher, and history has only taught us one thing, which is real estate is the best investment on this planet before us, always has been, and today continues to be. So Darren today, who is an educator, an investor, a friend, the co-founder of Synergy, and he'll speak to what Synergy Group is going to be taking point tonight, and we'll take you through the next half hour, 45 minutes, through what that looks like. What is investing in multiplexes? How do you look at properties? What is the opportunity? So he's going to take us through, and there is not many people who do it bigger than Darren in that space, in the actual ResCom investment multiplex space. There's people who do apartment buildings and huge developments. This is a niche market, and there's a lot of bread to eat in this space. So pay close attention, and I believe you're going to get a tremendous amount of value tonight. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to teach everyone. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave you to it.
That's it? You're out?
Yeah, well, you don't need me, trust me. I'll be back. So we're gonna do this about half hour, 45 minutes. Whenever you're wrapped up, I'll come and close. The close here tonight is gonna be very, very simple. Every single person is gonna have the opportunity at the end of the evening to schedule times to discuss this strategy with our coaches on our team. That's the close. There's nothing for sale. This is an educational event where if you get what you came for, you're going to be able to do things with. That's the point of it. So that's the grand design here. We enable real estate deals. That's what we do. We do deals. So we're going to help you find a way to do your deals. That's the point of the exercise. Enjoy the presentation. I'll be back. We're going to hang out for at least a half hour, 45 minutes after. Finish off the food, finish off the wine, and you know how that goes. Peter, welcome, buddy. Nice to see you, man. All right.
Do you guys mind if I stand? I feel like sitting is a little bit weird. But first of all, thank you guys. Thanks to REC and the team for having me here. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Darren. I'm based here in Toronto. I actually live in the West End of Toronto. I live in the Junction. I'm not originally from here. I grew up in a little town, well, not so little, but it's a place called Red Deer, Alberta. And I made the move out to Toronto in about 2002, and I kind of made my permanent home here in 2006. I've been an investor for about 21 years. It sounds like a long time because I still feel like I'm 25 some days, but I'm definitely not. But I started investing basically, first property I bought was a single family dwelling. And I actually was living in Toronto at the time. And I was wanting to invest here, but as probably some of you know, I was looking at Toronto real estate and I was like, it's way too expensive for me. I can't afford it. And I'll give you a little bit of a history of the Toronto real estate market. I was looking at condos in downtown Toronto, like College and Yonge, in 2002 when I was first looking to buy a property. And condos at the time were running at about $170,000 to $180,000 for about 800 square feet. And I was like, that's crazy. Who would ever pay $180,000 for a condo downtown? And there's no way the prices could ever go up from there. I wish I'd bought 25 of them at the time. I couldn't afford it. But, that was when I was like, okay, I can't afford Toronto. And I went back to Alberta, bought my first house, and basically bought a single family dwelling. I finished the basement and I was going to flip it. That didn't go very well. So I was like, well, I can't sell it and make money. So I'm going to put a tenant in there. So I put a tenant in there. First tenant I ever had, I had to evict that tenant. So I wasn't off to a great start as a real estate investor. Then I put the next tenant in there. They were in there for 4 years. The Alberta market was going crazy. 4 years later, I sold that property for almost double what I bought it for, took that money, and then I came back to Ontario and invested here. I bought 3 properties at that point. And that's where I really saw how real estate was a great vehicle for investing. And that's when I got really excited about it. And I know many of you have probably heard of the term exponential growth, but that's where I saw it for the first time. I went from 1 property to 3 properties, and I thought if I could go in another 5 years from 3 to 6 and then 6 to 12, this might be something that I could kind of get into. But it was my side gig. Real estate was not my full-time job. That wasn't the reality until about 5-6 years ago when I sort of took that plunge and said, I'm going to be a full-time real estate investor. And that's what I do now. So that's a little bit about my history. I know we skipped about 15 years, but that's okay. Tonight, I really wanted to talk about investing in multiplexes because I think the landscape is changed in Toronto. And Donald and I were just talking about it in the back, and he was just saying, things are different. Things are different in Toronto. And, you know, and I wanted to recognize that there's been a lot of recent changes. And so for those of you that are interested in investing, I think Toronto is back on the market. It's back. It should be back in properties that you're looking at. And a lot of that has to do with the zoning changes and the bylaw changes that have just happened, but also with Bill 23. How many of you are familiar with Bill 23? Okay, there should be more hands up for sure. So Bill 23 is a recent government change that happened where basically the government is really trying to incentivize us, and I'm going to call us all developers tonight, incentivize us as developers to go out there and add more rental units to the market. And how do we do that? We can do that now through a couple different ways. We can do that through every basically lot in Ontario is now going to be deemed to have at least minimum zoning for a triplex. Okay, that's a huge game changer. Not only that, there's also, what about in Toronto? They've just said anything under 4 units in Toronto is exempt from development charges. If you've never had to pay development charges, I'll tell you right now, they suck. And they're expensive. In a single unit in Toronto, you can look at, if you want to go from a single family dwelling to a duplex, that was going to cost you $75,000 in development charges. You want to add 3 units, multiply 3 times $75,000, and that was before you put a shovel in the ground, right? So now that they've eliminated the development charges for anything under 4 units, they've also eliminated any parking requirements, right? So you used to have to go in and say, I want to do a 4-unit dwelling, but now you have to figure out how you're going to park 4 vehicles on there, or you have to go in for what's called a minor variance. So all of these changes that have recently happened, you should be shifting your focus to looking back at Toronto. Within like Etobicoke, Scarborough, all the changes that just got approved at City Council, now you can do a minimum of a 4-plex on a Toronto lot. And if you can add a laneway suite or a garden suite, now you have a 5-plex on a Toronto lot that is really a bit of a game changer, right? So that's just kind of like where you should be thinking and where you should be looking at opportunities. But let me walk you through sort of a little bit of the actual multiplexes that we're doing in our business. So this is my team. I started out as an individual investor, as probably many of you are, or many of you are doing. And if you ask me how you scale by adding people to your team that do things better than you do. So I'm not great at operations. I'm not great at scheduling and responding to emails. So that's why I have those people. And finance, I'm good at running pro formas and numbers, but there's somebody who has an MBA that's much better than I am. So these are the people that are on my team. A little bit about me, and the guys sort of introed me and gave me a very nice welcome. How many of you have seen one of my YouTube videos? Amazing. I love that. Yeah. So my YouTube channel is just approaching 20,000 subscribers. I started it over 3 years ago. I get about 30,000 views a month on my YouTube channel, and I've just surpassed over 1 million views on my YouTube channel. So for those of you that are considering a thought leadership platform, and I know Jazz and his team would say thought leadership is something that has really changed the game for them, because if people don't know what you're doing, how are they ever going to, let's say, invest with you or partner with you or do anything like that? So if you're considering a thought leadership platform like YouTube, a podcast, a blog, a vlog, anything like that, I'm telling you right now, it is a huge game changer for anything that you want to do. So I have a YouTube channel. I'm a co-founder of Synergy Mastermind. Synergy Mastermind is a group of, right now, 65 investors from across the country. You have people from Victoria all the way through to Halifax. And this is an elite group of investors. So we have an application process to be a part of Synergy because we want to make sure that everyone that's inside of Synergy is looking to build their portfolio, scale their business, and they're around like-minded individuals. So Synergy is something that we started 3 years ago. We're just wrapping up our 3rd year. We're going into year 4 coming up in the fall. And Synergy is basically a membership. We do a weekly call virtually, and then 3 times a year we do live events. So we do one in the East, one in the West, and then we do one at an international destination. So we get together for 3 days. We bring in expert speakers, and we talk all about real estate investing, and that could be a variety of subjects. That could be development, that could be raising capital, that could be multifamily syndication. All of those things we cover inside of Synergy. So for those of you that are maybe interested in exploring Synergy Mastermind, we have a very low attrition rate, which means that from year to year, we have a very small number of people that leave Synergy. So we started with 35 people in year 1. We grew to 50 people in year 2. We went to 65 people in year 3, and we're going to only add another 10 spots in year 4. So we'll add 10 more members this year. But if it's something that you think you might be interested in, you can definitely chat with me after tonight, and I can explain a little bit more about how Synergy works. And then recently I launched my Ultimate Development course, which is basically all we're going to talk about tonight. This is what I now exclusively teach. I used to teach all kinds of different things in the real estate investing space. And now what I'm realizing is people really want to understand how development works and how they can do it themselves. So that's my development course. We just finished, wrapped on our recent version of that in May. This picture was actually from one of the site visits we did. We visited a 120 unit condo development that was being built. We got to walk the site with the construction manager. This was inside of their the building that was considered a historical building. So they had to save this. And it's basically a 6-month program of learning how to do development. So that's a little bit about me and what I do. But I want to kind of get into the content of tonight. These are some of our projects that I have going on right now. So we're going to talk about Oakmount tonight. Dovercourt is another project that we've finished recently. Dufferin is under construction. We're just about to start on our Highland Road project, which is a 31-unit purpose-built project in Kitchener, Ontario. I have a project in Nosara, Costa Rica. So for those of you that are interested in international development, that's one thing that I really am passionate about. And then our Glen Lake project is going to be under construction probably later this year. So we're going to talk about mostly like these 4 kind of projects here in Toronto. And I'm going to explain a little bit about how they work. And then you guys can ask questions at any point throughout the presentation. Are we good? Awesome. All right. So let's talk about investing in multiplexes. So I want to take you through this property, which was our Oakmount project that I stumbled upon in 2019. This was right during the pandemic. I was actually away in Costa Rica. I met somebody in the pool one day at the yoga resort that I was staying at. And the woman said to me, my husband's a realtor in Toronto. You should connect with him when you get back. I did that. And I called him up, and he said, hey, I've got this exclusive offering. It's not on the market, which everyone loves to hear, right? And he said, come and check it out. It's at High Park. He told me the address. I immediately knew where it was because I live in the neighborhood. And I was like, I cannot afford that property. I knew it right off the bat, right? It's way too expensive for me. There's no way this is going to happen. So I almost didn't even go and take a look at this property. But I decided I was more curious than anything else. I was like, maybe I'll go take a look at it and see what it looks like. So when I showed up at this property, it's a beautiful house, a beautiful brick house, a big estate home that had been there for many, many years. But immediately I was almost talking myself out of this transaction because it was too big and too expensive for me. Because up to that point, I'd only ever done joint venture partnerships. I'd worked with like maybe one other person or two other people, but I'd never done a capital raise. I'd never done a big project like this. So immediately I was like, I can't do it. But as I started to walk around the property, I was kind of thinking, you know what, there might be some possibility here. Because what I realized was, this was on a 42 by 200 lot. That's not very common for City of Toronto. So, and when we understand how zoning works and how density works in the City of Toronto or in any market, you start to look at the lot sizes, right? That's why they have it on the listing. A lot of us don't pay much attention to it, but when you're a developer, it's one of the first things you look at. What is the lot size? Okay, because that's going to tell you how much you can build. So I looked at the lot, it was 42 by 200. I looked at the house, big house, had 7 illegal units in it. Right? Somebody went in and chopped it up into, it was a beautiful single family dwelling at some point. Somebody bought it. They chopped it up into 7 illegal units, and there was like a dog's breakfast. There was 3 units in the basement. And by units, I'm being kind. One was a bedroom with one of those like portable kitchen units. It was like the sink and the fridge and the stove all in one. And they considered that an apartment. So there was 3 units in the basement, and then there was 4 units throughout the house. But, I was thinking about this and I was like, well, it's the structure looks good, right? I was excited about that. And the curb appeal is, it could use a bit of improvement, but it's got really good curb appeal in a great neighborhood, like 300 meters from transit between High Park Station and Keele Station. And the price point was $2.75 million. Now, the thing that I realized right away was there's not a lot of other investors looking at this project, because what are most investors looking for? They're looking for starter homes that they can turn into a duplex or a triplex, right? When you get into a purchase of 2.75, you get into a new bracket of investor. You get into a different category of people that can't afford those first-time, purchases. But you know what else you eliminate when you get into a property like this is every other first home buyer on the market. You don't have to compete with them anymore. They can't afford this property, right? So although I went there a little bit pessimistic because it was too expensive, I didn't have the money. This would be a massive renovation. I didn't know how to finance it. And it was giving me a little bit of stress and anxiety. All of a sudden, I was like, you know what? It's on a big lot. There's very little competition. It has really good zoning. I have a long conditional period. And this was something that I learned with bigger transactions. The realtor actually said to me, he said, do you need some time to think about it? And I said, yeah, I do. And I almost said, can I get 2 weeks conditions on the property? And before I said that, he said, why don't I just give you 30 days to make a decision? How many of you have ever bought a property in Toronto where you have 30 days to figure it out, right? Exactly, 20 years ago, right? So this was now I had long conditional time. And then there was also the future potential. You can't see it in this picture, but over here is a 12-story building. Across the street, another 12-story building. So what's eventually going to happen to this neighborhood? Somebody's going to come and buy this house, and the other 5, they're going to tear them all down, and they're going to go 12, 20 stories, whatever they're going to do. So there's also future potential, like not just near future, but like future down the road, right? So now I started getting a little bit excited about this potential opportunity. So what did I do? We made an offer. I made a conditional offer, say I need 30 days to think about this, but now I've got time to do due diligence. And this is where, if you're looking at bigger transactions, if you're looking at things that you are potentially going to be doing large scale renovation on or development, you'll have a little bit more time. And during due diligence, I was able to start to raise the capital for the transaction. I could actually talk to people and say, is this something you might be interested in? I was able to meet with the architects and contractors and the city to say, here's what I want to do. Is this even possible? Right? So now I get contractors, architects saying, yeah, we can actually make this a multi-unit building. I had conversations with the city, and I was actually able to begin the permit process. So I could actually submit for a building permit while I was still in the due diligence process. Now, we didn't do that, but we had the ability to do that, right? So this is why this long due diligence time really added something to the equation. So after we put our offer in and we did our due diligence, we decided to go firm on this property. Once I went firm on the property, what we realized was when we talked to the City of Toronto, this was still deemed a single family dwelling. No one had ever gone and legalized it, right? I said there was 7 illegal units. So we went to the city and they said it's a single family dwelling. So then I went to my mortgage broker and I said, can we get residential financing on this thing? And they said, maybe. What does it look like inside? I said, it looks like 7 crappy units. And they said, no way, no residential bank will ever finance it. So I went to talk to the seller and I said, I can't get residential financing on this thing. Is there any way that we could maybe do a couple little things before the appraisal happens? And the agent was one of the owners of the building as well. And he said, depends on what you want to do. I said, how about we take out 2 of those portable kitchens in the basement, and those are just rooms. He said, yeah, we can do that, no problem. I said, can we eliminate 1 more kitchen somewhere? And we got really lucky. There was a kitchen on the 2nd floor that had a laundry sink as their kitchen sink. And I said, what if we just put a washer dryer there and this is a laundry room now? And he said, yeah, we can do that. So we eliminated 2 kitchens in the basement and 1 on the 2nd floor. Now what do we have? A 4-plex. Can we get residential financing on a 4-plex? Yes, we can. So we did that. We were a little bit lucky, for sure. Appraiser came through. He was a little suspicious. He's like, I don't know. This looks like this might have been something more than a 4-plex before. But he signed the paperwork. We got residential financing on this property. So really inexpensive financing for a 5-year term with obviously low interest rates and really good terms. Now, the thing about this is I had to go out and raise the capital. I didn't have $1 million in cash. But I knew some people that, did. And this was part of my thought leadership platform, creating a YouTube channel, doing some of these other things. Now I had the ability to go out and raise the capital needed. But not only did I need to raise the capital, I needed to find somebody to qualify for the mortgage. Because how many of you have really good net worth, but your debt coverage ratios suck? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm one of those people, right? So I couldn't qualify for this thing. So my partners ended up qualifying for the property and also putting up some of the cash. So that's what happened when we kind of went firm. Now, in this situation, we had to do an environmental inspection. We had to do a commercial appraisal. We had to do a residential appraisal. We created a new corporation and we created a shareholders agreement. That was all before we actually went firm. And then once we went firm and we removed our conditions and we were owned the property, now it was time to execute. And that's basically taking this building from a single family dwelling and converting it to an 8-unit apartment building. So how did we do that? We did basically 2 units on every floor. Basement, 2 units, main floor, 2 units, 2nd floor, 2 units, and we added a full 3rd story and we did 2 units there as well. So now we have an 8-unit building in what used to be a single family dwelling. And then basically now we're at the point where we were outside of residential financing once we finished that project. Now what are we into? Commercial financing, because we're an apartment building. We're not a house anymore, right? So now we have totally different terms because now our loan is based on revenue and expenses. It's not based on me as a qualifying partner. It's not based on anyone else. It's based on now they're evaluating it like a business. What does this property bring in on an annual basis, right? And that's how you'll get a commercial loan. So we took it from a single family dwelling. You can see here some of the pictures. We actually took the back wall of the house off. We underpinned the basement. So that means we dropped the floor of the basement. We did all kinds of crazy things to this property. And these are some of the finished units here. So what does this look like? So now we have a 8-unit purpose-built rental. So we have 6 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom units. We have 7 car parking. Remember that 42 by 200 lot? That's a really nice size lot. We're also going to add a garden suite later this year. So for those of you that aren't familiar with garden suites or laneway suites, you should be looking at them in the city of Toronto. So we're actually going to add a 9th unit onto this property. That 9th unit is going to generate about $3,500 in revenue. Does anyone know what $3,500 of revenue will add in value with a 4% cap rate? About $750,000 of value, right? So we're going to spend $300,000 to build it to add $750,000 in value. So that's almost a 3x on your spend, right? So by adding just one more unit, because remember, we're in commercial financing now, and every dollar we add to the NOI, the net operating income, that increases the value of that building, right? So we're going to add another garden suite. Now, this was technically built after 2018, so it does not fall under rent control. So no rent control in this building. Even though it was a renovation, because, why is that? Because the city considered it a single-family dwelling, and when we convert it to an apartment building, now it doesn't fall under rent control. Yeah, Mitch.
It actually adds over $1 million in value, and your take out is 700 or something thousand.
That's right. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Here's what we got for financing on the back end. So if you can't see that. So we went to CMHC. CMHC is not a lender, they're an insurer, right? So they insure the lender for the loan. So we got a 10-year term, 3.93% interest, and we got a 40-year amortization. How many of you are familiar with the new CMHC program called MLI Select? Okay, great. So if you are not familiar with MLI Select, it's a new program out by CMHC that allows you to amortize a loan over 50 years now. It's a non-recourse loan if you can get into their highest percentage point, right? Which means, does anyone know what a non-recourse loan is? It's something that's not so common here in Canada. It basically means that what happens if you default on the loan in Canada normally, the bank can come after the asset, and it can also come after you personally for everything else you own. A non-recourse loan basically means that they're just going to take the asset. No one has to guarantee the property, right? So that's a huge benefit to MLI Select financing as well. So that's a new program. And if you're doing anything in the multifamily space, you need to understand how that works. But now we've got multiple exit options on this property. We can hold it, refinance it years later. We could sell it and exit, or this is a shareholders agreement. So we can basically sell shares in this transaction at any point. So I'll kind of pause here and just ask if there's any questions, because I've been talking for a long time, and I'll just answer anything you guys have about this project before we talk about the numbers. Yes, Mirabel.
Why did you decide to finance it from the beginning from 7 to 4? Is it easier from 7?
The problem with so the question is, why finance it residentially when it was 7 units? The challenge with that is there's 7 illegal units. The bank would not recognize them as being legal units, and therefore they would say, we don't trust this revenue. Because if they're illegal units, and this is like the same with a illegal basement apartment, an illegal unit in any of your properties, the bank often says, we don't want to finance that unit because at any point, the municipality could show up and say, this is not legal. You got to take this unit out, and now you've lost that revenue. So we couldn't really go down the route of financing it on the commercial side. So that's why we decided to go residential. Yeah.
Darren, how long did it take you from do your due diligence? How it's finishing you had the 8 years total?
Yeah, great question. Longer than I wanted. We renovated. Don't renovate during a pandemic. That's my first piece of advice for you. Lumber went to, we all know what happened with lumber. Labor shortages, supply chain issues, across the board. It was crazy. Our renovation budget for this was $1.5 million. It escalated to $2 million. Yeah. So we added another $500,000 to the reno budget, and it stretched. We were hoping about a year to get a permit and a year to build it. we were about 2.5 years. So instead of 2 years, we added another 6 months as well. So that was how long that took us. But yeah, it was there was definitely some additional costs and time. I think there's a question here. Yeah, and then I'll go back there.
Wondering, what was your experience going to the committee of adjustments? Because I've heard of this area, especially in Hyde Park, because they're notoriously bad for NIMBYism. And this was prior to the bills coming through, or the bylaws rather.
Yeah.
So
for those of you that aren't familiar with committee of adjustments, because we were outside of some of the parameters on parking and gross floor area, we needed to have a minor variance. I think we had about 12 minor variances on this project here. And if you're ever bored one night, just shoot me a message and I'll send you the link to the YouTube video that was the hearing for this property. I mean, people showed up. It's virtual. So they log in and they'll say anything. I mean, there's really nothing, there's nobody controlling what your neighbors are going to say about your property. We had one say at a recent committee of adjustments hearing, he said, the property that they're looking to develop, that's where I store my snow in the winter. I shovel onto their property. So if they develop it, I got no place to put my snow. And I was like, okay, that's one down. We don't have to worry about that one. And the committee members like, sir, are you telling me you store your snow on your neighbor's property? So you definitely have to deal with NIMBYism. And I get ahead of that by flyering my neighborhood with a letter. And I can share that letter with anyone that would like to see it. But I basically explain who I am, what I do. I tell them I'm going to be building 8 brand new legal units. Our tenants are of the highest quality. I am a professional real estate investor. This is not a side gig, because I know what you hear as my neighbor. You hear slumlord, right? And you hear like abandoned cars in the front yard. When you hear an 8-unit building, right? That's what your neighbors will hear. So I explain to them that that's not the case. I also open the door to say, please talk to me about any issues you have with our development. But NIMBYism is definitely something that happens. The thing that helps you with the committee is if you go in and you tell the committee members, this is a purpose-built rental to help the housing crisis that's going on in Toronto right now. Which it exactly is. And then the City of Toronto, the committee has a mandate. The planning department has told the committee members, we need more housing. We need more rental housing. So if it's not some sort of crazy application, push it forward, make it happen. And on every project that we've done of this size and scope, we've had unanimous support from the committee members. So even though you can have 10 neighbors show up and hate your development, it doesn't matter in some cases. Yeah, great question. Yes, back there.
What would have happened if you hadn't gotten approved for the zoning? You mentioned you had 30 days to make the offer. The zoning process would take longer. So what contingency class in the event that once it's out?
That's a great question. So I want to be clear. We didn't have to go for a zoning change. In the City of Toronto, in the proper, like in the downtown core, most properties have what's called R zoning. R zoning allows anything from a single family dwelling all the way up to an apartment building. Now, with that zoning, you have to have certain parameters that you have to meet, right? Setbacks, gross floor area, all those things. But it's not a zoning change. It's a minor variance application if you go outside of the parameters of that. So if you don't get a minor variance application approved, which takes about 3 to 4 months, then you would have the opportunity to modify your design based on why you didn't get approved, and you could go back to committee again, right? So we always have a contingency plan. So this one would have been, we would have gone 4 units instead of 8, and they would have been big, like 1,600 square foot units. Revenue model was almost the same. Cost to build is less because you only have 4 kitchens now instead of 8. And you always have those contingency plans there in case you don't get the approval at the committee of adjustments. Yeah. Yeah, Mitch.
Question on the team that you would have assembled. Were you general contracting if you found a good company that could do this?
So I have a lot of renovation experience, but I've built triplexes and things like that. This project, I hired a construction manager And I was lucky enough to have a construction manager that was also an investor on the deal. He put in $250,000 of his own money. So he had a vested interest in getting this project done well and as under budget as he possibly could. We didn't get under budget, but we definitely got a quality build because he was an investor in the project as well. But you could have done this with a general contractor. You could have done this with a construction manager. But, you know, we just happened to have somebody who had a construction background and experience that managed the project. I oversee all of the projects from a control perspective and all the financing and everything else. But we had somebody boots on the ground that was there every single day. I just don't have the time anymore with my schedule. And then I spend 4 months of the year in Costa Rica. So it's nice to have a business that operates here where you can do that remotely whenever you need to and want to. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just enough work for the audience. So the CMHC MLA Select you talked about before, just sort of aware the rates are moving up. The premiums are going to be going up on June the 19th. So Darren talked about what he's up with previously. The premiums are going to be increased. So CMHC decided to increase them right across the board for the MLA Select program on June 19th. So just,
Sorry, can you just speak up a little bit?
yeah, speak up a little bit. The CMHC MLA Select program that Darren was talking about before, the premium will be increasing on June the 19th. So you're going to go up 155 basis points from potentially 1% right now, which you got in 50-year AM and ticked all the boxes on the three sectors. So just as the audience is.
So, yeah, for those of you that have had a CMHC insured mortgage on like a residential property, you probably know that they have a premium that you have to pay, right? And then that gets added to the mortgage, and then that basically increases your payment a little bit, right? So those premiums are going up as of June 19th. Yeah, which tells you that there's massive demand for this program, and they grossly underestimated how many people were actually going to use it. And then they've had to add fees so they can hire more staff so they can actually push these applications through. Yeah.
Can you just give us a little bit of, how does that impact our pro forma? Does that impact existing? Does that impact renewals? And where do you see the impact, if any?
The impact right now will be on the going application stage right now for anybody that's new coming in. So it's now going to start clogging the CMHC channel at the moment because everyone's vying right now to get their applications in before that premium changes in 3 week time.
Yeah.
But essentially, it all depends on, you know, whether it's energy efficient, affordability, and accessibility. Those are the three main buckets that allows you to qualify up to 50 years, depending on how many points you've achieved in each of those respective categories or across the three categories.
Yeah. So under the MLI Select program, you can basically qualify for the 50-year amortization and the best loan with those three things. It's affordability. So if you have affordable units in your buildings, you can meet that criteria with affordability alone. You can build an energy efficient building. So on our Dufferin project, we're hitting all 100 points with energy efficiency alone. We were talking about that earlier with, heat pumps versus furnaces, with all kinds of, increase on the insulation. But at the building stage, when you're building a building from the ground up, that's an incremental cost to add efficiency to the building, right? So that's a small premium you'll have to pay when you're building versus after the fact, but you get these better financing terms. And then the last one is accessibility. So if you can add accessible barrier-free units, you can also get these great financing terms from CMHC. So those are the three criteria under this new program. They're really trying to push, and I've heard, I don't know, you might back me up on this, Harris, but I've heard that they push forward applications that have the affordability element faster than they do accessibility and energy efficiency because they want to bring more affordable units to the market as fast as they possibly can. Yes.
Question, the development charge exemption, does that apply to properties outside of the GTA? So would it apply to like partial with it?
Yeah, I'll just repeat the question. Yeah. So she's asking about the development charge reduction or the development charge exemption. Is that only in the city of Toronto? No, that's province-wide. That's Bill 23. So Bill 23, that is, you can now go to a 3-unit building on every lot in Ontario. You can go anything 10 units or under is exempt from site plan approval. So what that means, for those of you that have never been through site plan approval, I'll give you the short version of it. It sucks. It takes a lot of time and costs a lot of money. So if you don't have to go through that, that's a huge benefit. So anything in Ontario is now exempt under 10 units from going to site plan approval. There's also, what else is in there? There's different development charges for rental units. There's all kinds of other things that are available under the new Bill 23. Yeah. Yes, they're in there.
Darren, I'll just add one comment there and say that even though Bill 23 does mandate that most municipalities implement it as of right, there is 90% of the municipalities that they are unwilling to do so. And even just today, we received a huge development charges bill on a project. I wouldn't name the city, but it's happening across. So cities like Hamilton and Toronto are really doing it as of right, but some of the smaller cities, they're really not doing it as they're pushing back as far as
They're taking time.
yeah.
So I'll just add to that.
Yeah.
I was with the president of the Ontario Real Estate Association, who was one of the key drivers behind Bill 23 and that whole task force for the housing affordability.
Yeah.
The municipalities that choose to not promote Bill 23. Oh, sorry. I got you. The municipalities that choose to not promote Bill 23. The municipalities that choose to embrace Bill 23 are going to be condemned and penalized and rewarded accordingly. Ontario has a problem. All of us in this room are here to find out how to leverage this problem into meaningful lives and meaningful profits. And those who oppose it are going to be penalized as they should. NIMBYism has no place in a province like Ontario. There are many places on earth that if you feel you value solitude, peace, relaxation, luxury, go find it. But when people are just looking for work and a way to survive, and a way to grow, the GTA is the absolute hub of that. This is where people come to grow. I came to Toronto when I was 20. Half the people I know came to Toronto for the same reason. To go to Ryerson, get a job, to make a living. It's really what happened. I could have stayed in Red Deer, Alberta, where my parents brought me and worked at our pizza place. Real life. But I chose to come here because I wanted to go to Greektown and rub shoulders with the people that I appreciate, to make friends and connections in a career that meant something to me. And I'm not the only one. Every single person here is the same. We all have dreams and ambitions. So to take that away from people is to not support Bill 23, is to not, as an investor, if you could do this, how can, like I said to somebody earlier, I think it was Jerry, or to Jerry's daughter, once you see this, you can't unsee this. If you know there's 40-year money at 3 points, how can you unsee that? If you know that all you have to do is reach out to 3 or 4 people beside you, put the money together, you figure it out. Nobody owes you anything. Figure it out. But these deals can be done because you're doing them. And you teach people how to do this. No, yeah, great.
So should we talk numbers? You just finish up because I know we're getting to go on time. So here's what it looks like. So we finished the project recently, fully occupied it. This building generates about $23,000 a month in revenue. And it's high level. So
All 8 units.
8 units. Yeah. So current appraised value is $6 million. Current mortgage is around $3.6 million. Now, we actually got, we could have got this mortgage higher if we could have got the 5th-year amortization, right? Because that's going to extend your mortgage payments and it's going to give you a higher loan value, right? So the value, if we were to hold this property for 10 years, because commercial buildings are evaluated based on the revenue that they bring in, right? Now, we don't have any rent control, so if we can increase the growth of that building by 4% every year, that's a pretty standard growth rate over a 10-year span in the city of Toronto. Does anyone know how much rents went up from last year to this year? 20%. Right? So if we get 4%, we're good to go. We don't have any rent control, so we can increase. We've accommodated a 2% expense ratio increase as well, which we haven't seen on our buildings so far. We're less than 1% increase on our expenses year over year. So, we pay back that mortgage in 10 years. We pay out the garden suite loan. We'd have selling costs because we got to pay realtors to sell our buildings for us.
Thank God.
Yeah. The city is making here. That's right. We have a gross profit around $6 million. We would pay back the remaining capital that is owed to our investors, and we'd be left with a net profit of around $4.3 million. And this is an example of the deal that we have right now. So basically, over a 10-year span, we'd be paying our investors a 170% return annualized. It's a very simple annualized calculation, but 16.8% in the Toronto market, when a multi-unit building. This is what we're kind of doing right now. We have multiple of these projects going on at the same time. So happy to answer any questions you guys have about these projects and what we're doing. But this is kind of just a glimpse of how this model works. And I know it's probably raised another 100 questions for you. That's normal. But if I can help you out in any way, feel free to connect with me at any point. So that's all my contact information there. And thank you guys for having me here. And I really appreciate that. And and I can answer questions or do anything.
Yeah, this was good. Let's do a Q&A for sure. I have a few questions that I want, not so much for myself, but I know they're going to hit probably the majority of people's curiosities. The average appreciation in Toronto has been 7%, 6.7% over the 40 years, the last 40 years of organized real estate. You're talking about an annualized return of 16.7. What does it mean to outperform the index per se by 2.5 lives? Is there more risk? How much more risk is it than just buying a property and watching it sit? So if I just watch it sit, I'm going to get an average of 7 points in the last 40 years. Is it worth? How do you put a value on the risk factor? What am I risking to do this?
Of taking a building and trying to convert it to.
If you were going to, let's say there's 4 partners, they're going to put together a couple $1 million, 500,000 each. Why would they go that route? Is there more risk, or is it equivalent, low risk? How would you classify multifamily real estate?
So I want to separate two of those things. I want to separate multifamily real estate from development. Those are two very different risk profiles. In operation, when we get to this point, this is easy.
Is this multifamily?
This is multifamily now. The development part, there's a lot of risk in there. If you do not know what you're doing, these can be catastrophic mistakes that you can not only lose this one, but everything else in your portfolio if you don't know what you're doing. So this is not for the faint of heart, I would say. Development in general is quite risky. So if you're going to do it, please, this is not a pitch from me, get educated. Make sure you're working with someone who can guide you along the way, at least for your first deal, if not for your first couple of deals, right? But once you get into the multifamily operational space, and this is a brand new building, essentially. So are we going to have very high maintenance? No, it's pretty low maintenance year over year. We're going to have a really good tenant profile because we've got a brand new building, right? So there's a lot of pluses to that. But in terms of those two things, it's very separate. The risk for development is high. The risk for multifamily investing is relatively low.
Thank you for that. Because of the time, we're past 8 o'clock, and we want to give everybody at least 15, 20 minutes in that networking lounge.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us, what if there was 3 takeaways that you want everybody to go home with tonight? For you to feel that you did you're fulfilled, you gave people 3 things. What are your top 3 tips for people considering multifamily development and or buy and hold as an option?
First thing I think is obviously pay attention to what's going on in your municipality and in your province and wherever you're investing. The rules change all the time, and you as investors have to know exactly what's going on. When I asked about Bill 23, about half the hands in the room went up. When I asked about MLI Select, about a quarter of the hands in the room. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's in multifamily investing in commercial, real estate. So I understand that. But just understand what's going on. Keep in tune with what's happening around you as an investor. Stay connected to the REC team. Stay connected to what's happening on all levels of real estate investing. That's the first takeaway that I want you to have. The second thing is, I think there's more opportunity in the Toronto real estate market right now than there's ever been in the last decade.
In the last 100 years or 1,000 years for that matter.
Yeah.
So 23 did that.
Yeah.
Go on, my friend.
And the third thing is, I think that if you're an investor, and I see this a lot as of late, that you've been out there and you've tried various different strategies. What I'm seeing a lot of right now is people just saying, you know what? I'd rather give my money to somebody else who knows really what they're doing and let them do the hard work. And maybe I can make my 10, 12, 14% return and let somebody else do this stuff, right? So I think there's this stigma where you have to be out there and actually doing things. No, what's important? The most important thing is you're making a solid return on your money. That's the most important thing. Take the ego out of it. Let somebody do what they want to do and just sit there and relax and continue living your life. I think so many people have to feel like they have to be actively involved as real estate investors. If you can make a similar return with doing nothing, trust me, you're winning. Because you don't have to work 18 hours a day, right? Yeah, so that's my 3 piece.
I mean, I turn 29 tomorrow. I'm not stressed.
And if you believe that, I've got some ice. I mean, our figure was...
Okay, well, that is that's going to take us to Mr. Darren Voros's end of presentation.
Sorry, I went long.
My bad. No.